Publications. I would like to welcome you all for the webinar on sampling techniques in quantitative research. To start with, let me give you a brief about QA research and publications. QA serves as a platform to publish research articles in prominent journals and conferences proceedings. We assist authors in publishing their research findings in high impact factor journals, promoting their work, enhancing their reputation, and building a strong scientific profile. Among several indexing databases, Scopus is one of the most preferred for publishing articles. The wide recognition and impact of these journals make them highly valued in their academic careers. We have currently collaborated with the Scopus Q1 journal, FN1000 Research, published by Taylor and Francis. The authors can now easily submit their articles through a partnered gateway with FN1000. FN1000 Research is an open research publishing platform for scientists, scholars, and clinicians that offers rapid publication of articles and other research outputs without editorial bias. All articles benefits from transparent peer review and editorial guidance on making all source data openly available. Now, I would like to welcome our speaker, Chrislyn M. Serona, who is an assistant professor under the College of Business at Bukidnon State University, Impact Sagong campus, Philippines. She has a total of 16 plus years of collective working experience in visual merchandising, customer service, document control, administration, and teaching across the Philippines, Qatar, and Singapore. She is a certified human resource professional and currently doing a dissertation in doctor and management major in human resource management at Liceo di Cagayan University. She has been invited as the key review committee member, a knowledge dissemination committee member, resource speaker, and research facilitator in various research conferences both in the Philippines and Thailand. She was one of the awardees under Ban Awards 2024, Halford Dodger Scientific Index 2024, EPM and APCU awardee as Promising University Professor, Writer and Research 2024, Dubai, UAE. She also obtained a certification in visual merchandising and customer service in Singapore in 2012 and was awarded under the Singapore Gem Awards Mystery Shopper in 2008. She is a member of the International Society for Development and Sustainability Japan, International Federation of Professional Managers, United Kingdom, International Association of Scholarly Publishers, Editors, and Reviewers, and others. Once again, I would like to welcome you, Doctor. You may start now.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Doctor, you're audible.
Okay, so allow me to share my screen. Is it visible now? Okay, so I believe my screen is now visible. And so good afternoon, everyone. And good morning in maybe some parts of the country or in other places. So now it's 5:30 in the Philippines, and I hope everyone is in their comfortable seats, and I hope that we'll be able to learn together for today's webinar. And would like to thank Quvae Research Publication for inviting me as your resource speaker for this afternoon. Okay, so anyways, I just got married, so now I am Chrislyn Sorana Benelizo. Okay, so I will start. So today we'll be tackling about the sampling techniques in a quantitative research. And hold on, I'll just going to. Okay. So the objective for today's webinar is to have an understanding on the various types of sampling and appreciate its importance to ensure that the sample group is a true representative of the population as a whole in a quantitative study. So first, before we'll be going to the techniques, let us define first what is sampling and sample, because I have known a lot of students who are having a confusion because their words are similar, but they are different in terms of the usage. So sampling is a process of selecting units or sample from a population of interest so that by studying the sample, the researcher may fairly generalize the results back to the population from which they were chosen. So when we say a sampling, it is a verb or an action word. Okay, so it's a sampling. You are going to select from the population. And then we have here the sample. So when you conduct research about a group of people, it's rarely possible to collect data from every person in that group. Instead, you select a sample. So I believe that we cannot really, or it's impossible to collect a lot of, or a data from a huge group of people. So I hope from the researchers, no, they can relate to this. So like, for example, in the Philippines, even in the Mindanao, one of the islands, it's so difficult to get the entire population to have to answer a particular research. So that's why we only get the sample. So now the sample is the group of individuals who will actually participate in the research. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So before I'm going to proceed with the sampling technique, I think it's important for us to just discuss a little bit of the sampling frame. So it means that it is a group of individuals or a group of organizations with some common defining characteristics that the researcher can identify and study. Within this target population, researchers then select a sample for the study. If you're going to look at this, now this is the population and you are going to get the sample out of the population. Later on, I will be discussing more of the details. So when developing a research study, it is important to identify your population of interest, such as the people, organizations, or group. Sometimes, maybe when we're doing our research, your population of interest changes because maybe in your studies and maybe on its relevance, right? So you can read a lot of relevant literature so that you can understand more on what is really the most important or your target population. Because sometimes we already have the title, we already have the idea, but then we are not sure who will be your population. So you have to take time for this one. Okay. So prior to selecting a sample, you need to define a sampling frame, which is a list of all the units of the population of interest. So in my case, I would like to give an example. So where are you going to get the list of the units of the population of interest? I would like to give an example of my ongoing study right now. So my study focuses on the business, food business industry in here in Mindanao. And in order for me to get the correct or the right population of interest, I was able to write to the business office, licensing office for me to get the population of interest. If you're able or if you can have the data, it is best to get it, but maybe if it's really difficult, then it's fine. But as much as possible, try to get the population so you can get the correct sample or sampling frame. So what are the qualities of a good sampling frame? So first one is it include all individuals in the target population, exclude all individuals not in the target population, and includes accurate information that can be used to contact selected individuals. So in other case, like for example, if you would like to study about the university professors, if you could get from the HR, it's best because you can contact these individuals easily. No, okay, so actually, I believe that in the sampling frame, this is also included in your delimitation of the study. So you have to be specific on who really are included in your population so that it will save your time and you have an accurate result. Okay, next is, okay, so understanding population versus sample. So again, the population is the entire group that you want to draw conclusion about. It is a group of individuals who have the same characteristics. For example, all teachers would make up the population or all secondary school heads in a school division, or maybe supervisors in a specific food chain or nurses. So that is the population. And then we have here the samples. These are the specific individuals that will collect data from. Because again, it's really difficult to let everyone answer the questionnaire. Okay, and then we have here the representative. So this refers to the selection of individuals from a sample of population such that the individuals selected are typical of the population under the study, enabling you to draw conclusions from the sample about the population as a whole. So you have the population and you're able to get the sample, and those individuals selected from the sample are called representatives. Okay, so that's why in a write-ups, we have the representatives of my study are the following, because they are the ones who really answered your questionnaire. Okay, so now the sample size. Sample size is the number of individuals you should include in your sample. Depends on various factors, including the size and variability of the population and your research design. So there are different sample size calculators that you can use online and formulas depending what you want to achieve with statistical analysis. So I believe that every university have their own format. So in case you are doing your research or dissertation right now, you have to ask your advisors or the panels on maybe they prefer statistical analysis or calculators or maybe formulas that will be using on your study. A general rule of thumb: select a large sample as possible from the population, because the larger the sample, the less potential error is the sample will be different from the population. So we'll be understanding on why is it that the larger sample is less errors. I would like to apologize for my erroneous technical errors. Okay, so now we are going to discuss a little bit on the confidence level, margin of errors, and the sample size formulas. So the first thing to understand in calculating the sample size is the difference between the confidence level and margins of error. So the confidence level less the margins of error is your sample size. So it indicates the reliability of statistics that have been calculated by research. And if you're able to observe that most research studies have a confidence intervals of 90% confidence, 95%, or 99% confidence. This is 99% is really, really strict. Okay. But the standard survey of the confidence level is 95% and margin of error is 5%. So let us understand more of this. So I'll give you an example of my calculation. Okay, so again, you can use a sample calculation of data online. It's free. But in my study, I just want to give this example. So I'm using the Cochrane formula because in our university, it is best for us to compute manually so that they can understand. Okay, so in my study, I have used 95% level of confidence, and which means I have a 5% margin of error. So here we have here the 384 Cochrane, which was developed a formula to calculate a representative sample of proportions according to Ahmed and Halim in 2017. So this is the formula, and my study composes of two cities. Okay, my food business industry is divided into two strata: the fast food and restaurant food business industry, which has a total of 234. Okay, so you're going to transpose and solve based on the formula. So I will not dwell for long because let's focus on the sampling techniques, but just for reference. So, okay, so this is the data, and I was able to summarize it here. So in my study, I have used the strata, okay, stratified sampling, and this is how I was able to get my population the total population and the sample size. So if you're going to look at this, I have a total of 746 population. And I have a sample size of 488. If you're going to ask me, it's so big, right? Because I have made or computed the sample size per fast food and restaurant per city, because that is what my advisor or the panel wanted me to have. Okay, so this is a sample size calculator that you could use online. So you just have, it is very easy. Okay, you can just have to write the 95% confidence, a margin of error. You can just leave this as it is, and you can get the total and you can write the total population size, and then you can get the sample size of 145. So, sorry. So the example that I have is a fast food. I have 230 and I got the 145. So they are the same. Okay. So why is it that the standard survey composes of confidence level of 95% and a margin of error of 5%? It simply means that our confidence level states that 19 out of 20 times we conduct this survey, our results would land within our margin of error of 5%. So if you're going to do your research 19 of 20 times, you will get the same result. So our 5% margin of error says that, for example, if you surveyed all 400 respondents, or the whole population, the results could differ with a score of 5% plus or 5% less from its original score. So example, you have the result, okay? The respondents have rated their satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10 using a Likert scale, and it resulted in a final average of score of 7.8. So because of the 95% confidence level, that if we surveyed all 400 teachers, our average score would be 7.3 to 8.3, which is 5% higher and 5% lower from the 7.8 average score. So I hope that it is clear, because sometimes some of the students are following the confidence level and margin of error and not really grasping what is the statement behind this. Okay, so now we are going to have the sampling techniques. So to draw valid conclusions from your results, you have to carefully decide how you will select a sample that is representative of the group as a whole, and this is called a sampling method. So since we have done a little discussion of the sampling method and getting sample size, so it's easier for us to understand the sampling techniques. And there are two primary types of sampling methods that you can use in your research. So the first one is probability or random, which involves random selection, allowing you to make strong statistical inferences about the whole group, and non-probability or non-random, which involves non-random selection based on convenience or other criteria, allowing you to easily collect data. So it depends on your situation and your study. Okay, so let's delve in. So probability or random sampling, the first one and very popular and very common is simple random sampling. In a simple random sample, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. For example, in a population of 300 teachers, which has a sample size of 169, are selected randomly for the sample using draw lots, or you can also have a style of selection. Okay, so in my case, or usually, like if we are going to follow some ethical considerations in research, we have to seek permission if in case you would like to have this you're going to survey a population in a specific organization or maybe a university, right? And then we can just give it to the supervisor or manager so that he will be the one who's going to give it to a particular population. But given that all of them has an equal chance of being selected. But at the same time, we have to um, also remind ourselves that everyone can also say no, right? They have the right to withdraw. So, okay, so now this is what simple random sampling looks like. So this is the population, let us say 300 teachers, and you have the 169 sample size. And then maybe you would like to use a draw lots to get the number generator and collect the data from the sample. Let us say number 29, Miss De La Cruz, or maybe number 50, okay, Miss So and so, then you can get the sample if you have the list, okay? Now, when to use some simple random sampling. It is used to make statistical inferences about a population. It helps ensure high internal validity. Randomization is the best method to reduce the impact of potential confounding variables. And in addition, with a large enough sample size, a simple random sample has high external validity and it represents the characteristics of a larger population. So with that, what is high internal validity? Okay, so high internal validity is there is a consistency in the item. So let's example your questionnaire. That is why before you're going to give away your questionnaires and do your implementation of your study, you have to go through pilot testing. Okay? And then the external validity is it means that the findings can be generalizable to similar individuals of the population. So if you have a particular study, let us say COVID-19 patients, that means it can also be true or generalizable to another country. That is what we call an external validity. So the bigger or the larger sample size, the better. Prerequisites for this one, you have a complete list of every member of the population. You can contact or access each member of the population if they are selected. And you have the time and resources to collect data from the necessary sample size. So sometimes I know and understand that as a researcher, we cannot really get the complete list of every member. We can have the number of how much is the population because sometimes of due to the Data Privacy Act, right? But then again, like me, I got the access from of my study from the business and licensing unit, so I was able to identify how many employees really are there in a particular business industry. And from there also I was able to segregate which one is under the fast food and which one is under the restaurant food business industry. So I will not be mistaken. So simple random sampling works best if you have a lot of time and resources to conduct your study, or if you are studying a limited population that can easily be sampled. So now, let's have the systematic sampling. So systematic sampling involves choosing your sample based on a regular interval rather than a fully random selection, which was the first one. So it can also be used when you don't have a complete list of the population. Let us say you really don't know. I really don't know how many really are a particular adults, or let us say I have a study and I wanted to study on adults ranging 25 and above. So you really don't have the population. So you can use this one. So it is more simplified and versatile probability sampling method where researchers select members of the population at a regular interval. So this is the image where you define the population. Again, you decide on the sample size based on the sampling calculator. And here, you can estimate the population size and divide by the sample size. So the population divided by the sample size, and you can actually get the sampling interval. And you select every nth member and you can collect the data. So I have examples here for you. So in a systematic sampling, you have two choices for data collection. So first, you can select your sample ahead of time from a list and then approach the selected subjects to collect data. Or you can approach every nth member of your target population to ask them to participate in your study. So how are you able to get, or what is the particular scenario where you can able to select a sample ahead of time when you have from a list? So I just want to give an example. Okay, so let for example, in a particular shop, okay, usually there are lists of regular customers, right? Or maybe you have a data in which you have the list of customers, how much they purchase, and usually what time and what week or when they're going to shop. So you can use this one, okay? For example, and then, or maybe you approach every nth member of your target population. An example, you run a department store and are interested in how you can improve the store experience for your customers. To investigate this question, you ask an employee to stand by the store entrance and survey every 20th visitor who leaves every day for a week. Okay? So I was able to arrive with the 20th visitor. Actually, this example, it has 7,500 divided by the 360. You'll get the 20th visitor. Or if you want, sometimes you can use also a draw lots if you want. Okay? So like every 8th or every nth customer will come. So I believe you have some experience of this one. Like you a person will approach you for a particular survey. Like my experience, Jollibee. Jollibee is one of the famous Filipino restaurants, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world. And I've actually approached twice from different branches in different cities to have a survey. And yeah, so I was able to have the survey. So although you do not necessarily have a list of your customers ahead of time, for example, this method should still provide you with representative sample of your customers since the order of exit is essentially random. So for my experience, of course, I dined in with Jollibee. I ate there. Actually, I'm a regular customer. And of course, I'm a correct representative because I was there. Okay. So whoever eats or shops with that department store, you are the perfect representative. Okay. So we have here a systematic sampling still. So this is the example that I have discussed earlier. Okay. So for example, you know exactly how many people will visit your store ahead of time. You can estimate the total population by using the average of the prior few weeks foot traffic. Usually, in a particular department store or a boutique in a mall or even in your small cafe, you know when it's the busiest time. Usually, it's Friday night, Saturday night, or over the weekends. And basically, on weekdays, it's not really that traffic, or you know that most of the time customers will come maybe after work, right? So based on my experience, when I was working in Singapore last time, we're basing our quota and commissions based on the foot traffic that we have. So again, you can divide the total or estimated population, and then you got the sample size, and then you can get the nth number. Or maybe if you want to study about students in a class of a 12th grade for 10 sections, maybe every number eight student on the list will be the one who is going to answer your survey questionnaire. So you can also do that. Okay, so the third one is stratified sampling. So a method of sampling that involves the division of population into smaller subgroups, which is known as strata. So this is very common. So researchers divide a population into homogeneous subpopulations called strata, example, the race, gender, identity, location, etc. So every member of the population studied should be exactly in one stratum. So earlier I've shown you my sample size, our population data. It was It's actually two cities in one province here in the Philippines. So since I have I've been studying actually about the generational age from um X, Y, and Z, and it comes from different cities. So I have decided to do a strata, okay? Because it's homogeneous subpopulations, and they're like coming from different types of representatives or samples. So each stratum is then sampled using another probability sampling method. Maybe you can use a cluster sampling after that, or simple random sampling, allowing you researchers to estimate statistical measures for each subpopulation. So in my case, I have used stratified sampling and I used simple random sampling in my study. Because first, I have already the list of the population from that strata. Okay. And of course, with the knowledge of our statisticians, advisors, and the panels, they can also recommend in your study on which really is the best one for you. Okay, so researchers rely on stratified sampling when a population's characteristics are diverse and they want to ensure that every characteristics is properly represented in the sample. Make sure that you're going to collect really the data on that particular group, okay? Because maybe I need more my population or representative is not enough, and then you're going to ask your friend to answer for you, and then you will have the bias. Your result is wrong already. Okay, so we should avoid that. All right, so now we have a cluster sampling. So in cluster sampling, researchers divide a population into smaller groups known as clusters. They then randomly select among these clusters to form a sample. So cluster sampling is a method of probability sampling that is often used to study large populations, particularly those that are widely geographically dispersed. Researchers usually use pre-existing units such as schools or cities as their cluster. So just want to give an example for this one. So in the Philippines, where I live in, we have three islands. Okay, Philippines composes of anyone from the Philippines here? Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So this is a good example of in using the cluster sampling because it's very large and dispersed. You cannot go from one island to another. You have to take a boat or a plane. And with different languages, dialects. Okay, so you can use this one. Okay, so maybe you would like to have, I want to cluster my study from the entire Philippines. I would like to cluster my study from three islands, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. You can do that. Okay, or maybe you want to make it more particular and smaller, then it's up to you. So in the cluster sampling, you have to define the population. Basically in the Philippines or maybe in your country, you already have, right? It's available online. So you can define the population already. How many Filipinos or how many of you lives in that country, and then you can start the cluster population, maybe how many is from Luzon and then Visayas and Mindanao, and then I can randomly select the clusters that I wanted, and then I collect the data from the clusters. And that will be the representation or the representatives from the population that you have. Now we have there are two types of cluster sampling. The first one is simple cluster sampling. So here you have to define your population. So you must first begin by clearly defining the population you wish to study. And you should meet the following criteria. The first one is each cluster's population should be as diverse as possible. Of course, in a cluster, it should be diverse. Each cluster should have a similar distribution of the population as a whole. And taken together, the cluster should cover the entire population, and there not be any overlap between the clusters, like the same people or unit in more than one clusters. Okay, so yeah, you cannot have like duplicate, okay, your of the same sample size or the representative in your study. And yeah, so maybe some of you, right, when you're going to watch a television and then you see this in the television, there is a report like in the Philippines, out of 9 out of 10 individual believes that we should wear mask during the COVID-19. Some are agreeing on, some are disagreeing, and then you will feel like I was not asked about it. Why is it that entire Filipinos? And then then this explains why, okay? Because not every one of you will get the survey, but you are just a representative from that population. Okay? So randomly select clusters to use as your sample. You can use that. So if each cluster is itself a mini representation of the larger population, randomly selecting and sampling from the clusters allows you to imitate simple random sampling, which in turn support the validity of your results. So simple random sampling is really useful in many ways because actually it's really in terms of validity of your results and in avoiding the biases, it is really, really good. And then after that, you collect the data from the sample that you want. Okay, sometimes you will be receiving a message, right? Like, would you like to get a survey from us? And then you can just click online because it's available. And then from the end of the researcher, they can actually receive it. All right, so is everyone still okay? Yes. Okay. So I will be answering your questions after the presentation. Okay. So now the second type of cluster sampling is multi-stage cluster sampling. So in multi-stage cluster sampling, rather than collect data from every single unit in the selected clusters, you randomly select individual units from within the cluster used as your example as a sample. Okay. So now it's also called a double stage cluster sampling. Okay, so I have an example here that is really easy. Okay, instead of collecting data from every seventh grader in a selected schools, you narrow down your sample into two additional stages. From each school, you randomly select a sample of seventh grade classes. From within those classes, you randomly select a sample of students. So I just give it a more simple multi-stage sampling, but you can use it in a diverse way. Okay, let's say I have two cities, and these two cities are like Metro Manila or Cebu City. These are very huge cities here in the Philippines. So then you can use it. Let's say you have 7 schools registered, okay, and there are 3 sections and it has 30 students. So you have 7 times 30 is 670, and I got the sample size and I needed 245. Okay, and then I just want to give you also a tip. Okay, so if, for example, you have a big size, okay, like in my study, I have 700 plus. If I'm going to use the sample calculator from the population of 700, I will only get 200 plus, which is easier for me. But then my panel wanted me to divide it by strata and then get the population per city. So that's why I ended up with 400, which is more. So I suggest that if you have bigger population, you can get, if you can convince your panel or if they agree, then you can use it. Okay. So the 245, there are 35 classes and you divide it to 7. And then you can get 7 random students per class. So there's no need for you to go every school. I mean, every students, okay? I just need 7 from that class. So this is the simplified example I could give you. All right, so now we have the advantages of disadvantages in cluster sampling. Sampling is time and cost efficient, especially for samples that are widely geographically spread and would be difficult to properly sample otherwise. Because cluster sampling uses randomization, if the population is clustered properly, your study will have high external validity because your sample will reflect the characteristics of the larger population. And disadvantages, validity is less strong than with simple random sampling, particularly as you use more stages of clustering. And if your clusters are not a good mini representation of the population as a whole, then it is more difficult to rely upon your sample to provide valid results and is very likely to be biased. So again, um, it's okay to take time if, let us say, it's not for your thesis or dissertation. It is good to take time, okay? And in case that if you can see that you have like 6 months or 3 months to do your research, then don't do cluster sampling because, you know, you have to get more data. So again, cluster sampling is more complex to plan than other forms of sampling. Why I'm saying this is because you need to study a lot. Okay, like for example, I wanted to study the different islands in the Philippines, the different language dialects, and then it will take time for you to study. Okay, but if you have more time, then you can do it as well. Okay, so next, we are now on the last part, which is the non-probability sampling technique. So this sample is one in which the probability of including population elements are unknown, totally unknown. And usually that every element in the population has a chance of being selected. Unlike the random sampling, they have the chance to answer your survey, all of them. So it is also quite common for the population to be the same as the sample, in which case there is no immediate need to generalize a larger population. So basically, non-population sampling technique, you can use this in a smaller population. Okay, for example, you have only 20 or 50. Okay, and then of course, or you have 100, you can get all of the 100 for that particular population to do this one. Okay, because it's really small. So it depends. Okay, so there are four types. We have convenience sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. Okay, so first one is convenience sampling. So a convenience sampling is a group of subjects because of availability. So convenience sampling is possibly the most effective shape of non-probability sampling, and researchers choose members based on their accessibility and proximity, making it convenient to collect information. When I was reading and doing my literature review, I realized that in my study, which is food business industry, a lot of them are using the convenience sampling, okay, because of the number of qualified population or identified population. Like in my case, like if I wanted to study only for the dining and kitchen in my particular city, then actually I can use convenience sampling. But in case like I wanted to study only in this small city and it's proximity, so you can use it. For here, I have the best example, okay? For example, surveying humans at a shopping center or a nearby park would be considered a convenience pattern. And if you're in a mall, I don't know if you get irritated or you would like to participate with this kind of survey. Like, hi ma'am, I would like to have a survey, a very short one. Would like to ask you about your experience in our mall. Are you satisfied or not? Yeah, so this one. They are all available. So this method is simple to implement. It frequently outcomes in a biased sample as it may not, as it should be represent the complete population. So, but in terms of biases, it is more frequent. But anyways, you can justify it. All right. So next is purposive sampling or judgmental sampling. Researchers handpick individuals who they consider are the maximum applicable or knowledgeable approximately the study topic. This method is frequently utilized in qualitative studies or while specialist evaluation are required. However, it can introduce researcher bias and may not be appropriate for generalization because it's selected. Okay, so let us say I would like to have a study on in research on effective teaching. It may be most informative to observe only experts or masters teachers or teachers that rather than all teachers. So let us say in depth ed, they have master teachers, principals. So in my study, I only wanted to have the principals in my study. So you can use this one, purposive sampling, okay, for the purpose of your study. Okay, or maybe you can have a study on the performance of top performing employee in a big company. Instead of choosing employee randomly, you can go directly to the top performing employee because he is the one suitable for your study. Okay. And the third one is quota sampling. Still have time. So this used when the researcher is unable to take a probability sample but still wants a sample that is representative of the entire population. It entails dividing the population into subgroups or strata and then putting a quota for each subgroup. Different composite profiles of major groups in the population are identified and then subjects are selected non-randomly to represent each group. So a type of quota sampling that is common in educational research is conducted to represent geographic areas of or types of communities such as urban, rural, and suburban, for example. So I have an example here. A researcher wants to survey individuals about what smartphone phone brand they prefer to use. He or she considers a sample size of 500 respondents. Okay, so also he or she is only interested in surveying 10 states in the US. Here's how the researcher can divide the population by quotas. Okay, so I have 150 males and 250 females, total of 500 respondents. And age, okay, from their age, 100 respondents each between the ages of 16 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and 51 up. So you can see here, they have the same they are divided equally. Okay, so actually this also happens randomly along the street, right? Like, hi ma'am, are you using Samsung? Are you using Apple? I would like to ask you if you could give us a feedback. I'm having a survey on in terms of technicality or friendly wise of our company. So yeah, you can actually see this everywhere. But then you were able to have the correct representative of your study because you have confirmed that you are using this brand, smartphone brand. Okay, so there are characteristics of quota sampling. So it aims to get the best representation of respondents in the final sample. This is summary. The quotas replicate the population of interest in a real sense, and the estimates produced are more representative, and the quality of quota samples vary and saves research data collection time as the sample represents the population, saves research costs if the quotas accurately represent the population. It monitors the number of types of individuals who take the survey. The researcher always divides a population into subgroups, like earlier, and the sample represents the entire population. And of course, the researchers use the sampling method to identify the traits of a specific group of people. And the last one, which is the snowball sampling. So this is also common. Okay, so non-probability sampling technique is in which the samples have rare traits. This is a sampling technique in which existing subjects provide referrals to recruit samples required for a research study. So this is how it looks like. Okay, from one person, and then you have two samples, and then three, and then you're able to get the population or the representatives based on the sample size that you needed on a particular study. So here in the snowball sampling, begin by identifying someone who meets the criteria for inclusion in your study, then ask respondent to recommend others so they may know who also meet the criteria. Make sure that the person is going to pass or recommend someone is really exactly the person that you are looking for. Otherwise, then it will be wrong. Let us say you wanted to have a manager's experience in a particular bank. So make sure there's a manager and is really working in a bank, no? Okay, so there are three types of snow sampling. We have linear snow sampling. This method forms a sample group with a single subject. So they provide contact information from one other person who would be appropriate for the study. That person is invited to join and provide one referral themselves, and this continues until enough people have been recruited for the study. So it starts with a group of people and then to one person. Okay, let us say like I have 20 group of people, and then each one of them will contact one person that belongs to that particular um, sample, okay, or population that they need. And then the next one, exponential non-discriminative snowball sampling. As with linear snowball sampling, this method starts with a single participant. So it's like the one that I've showed you earlier. So they provide contact information for multiple potential subjects who are invited to participate. And these people are then asked to provide referrals to multiple other potential participants. So basically, this is what it looks like. Okay, so it's a single participant to multiple potential subjects. And the last one is the exponential discriminative snowball sampling. This approach is a combination of the previous two. Okay, so each participant provides multiple referrals to people who may be interested in joining the study. Okay, so from one participant, you're asking other people to answer the questions. An example maybe an example I could say is that you want to study on the LGBT community. Okay, so you have one identified LGBT person, then you can ask him to please send if to ask permission to a participant that you know who is under this particular criteria, then you can ask them to answer your survey. Okay? Remember that who is also only interested in joining the study, do not force someone to answer your survey if they're not interested. Okay? So out of that group, one person is invited to participate. Okay, so it's a combination. So based on the study's unique requirements, this enables researchers to narrow down the participants based on the characteristics they're looking for. So you can have one participant to multiple referrals, or you have that group to invite one participant. So this type of snowball sampling takes the most time, but it allows researchers to make the most detailed choices about who participates in the study. So that ends my presentation. Am I on time? I have 10 minutes. Okay, so these are my references, and thank you so much for listening. Maraming salamat po, and God bless everyone.
Now the session is open for Q&A. If you have any questions, you may ask now.
Okay, so I have a question here. I think I have discussed it, but can you differentiate between cluster sampling and stratified? Okay, so I'll go back to my slide so that it's easier. Okay, for the stratified. So in stratified, I understand that there's always a confusion within. Should I go do a cluster sampling like me? Should I separate it by cluster? Should I separate this particular city to this city with the province, or I should do a strata? So, okay, so in my study, you can actually check, okay? That's you can check which do you think is the best for your study, okay? Because you can actually I can use cluster sampling in my study, but I have decided to do a stratified sampling because I have a homogeneous population subpopulations, because I'm studying the generational age of a particular population, specifically in the food business industry. So I have to separate it by first is by cluster, two cities. So like there's one province composes of two cities, a city. And then I have my gender. So I have to divide them also by gender. Okay. And if aside from that, I have to divide them as well as per the kitchen and the dining staff. So I am very particular, and I've known exactly what are the type or specific population or sample or representatives that I wanted. Okay, so that is why I have decided to go for strata. Okay, but then, you can see here that each stratum is a sample using another probability sampling method, such as cluster sampling or simple random sampling. Okay, allowing researchers to estimate statistical measures for each subpopulation. So if I'm going to exemplify my research, is because after you're able to find the strata, you can also do the cluster. Like mine, it is in strata, but it's also divided into two cities. So actually, for this one, um, you have like, there's always like a discussion between the panel and your advisors. So take a look on the result Okay, but let us say you just have a diverse study, okay, like entire Philippines or entire US or entire India. It is best that you are going to use the cluster sampling. Okay, and then from the cluster sampling, you wanted to divide it into two groups, and then you can go into a different sample, like the one that I told you earlier, the multiple cluster sampling, so that you can have the smallest possible people who can be the best representative or sample for that entire population. So here, a stratified sampling, when a population's characteristics are diverse and they want to ensure that the characteristics is properly represented in the sample, because I'm very specific with the gender, age, generational age, whether they are in the X, Y, and Z. So I hope I have answered your question, Miss or Mr. Nafis. Okay, so any questions? I hope that I have made my discussion very simple. Yes, and then especially right, I think yes, Atika, you're raising your hand. You have question? Okay, so again, maybe for those participants who able to cannot unmute.
Hello,
Okay.
hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I'm Atika from Malaysia. So this is my question.
Mhm.
If I have mixed method research, do I have to employ different sampling techniques for quantitative and qualitative data collection?
Okay, for your mixed method, okay. Is it really a mixed method, or you're just using the qualitative for triangulation? Anyways, okay, so for your study, you can actually use both for this one. Actually, if you're going to look at this probability and non-probability, let us say you wanted to start with a quantitative first, okay? Whichever is more comfortable. Let us say I wanted to send my sample of survey questionnaire quantitative study using the Likert scale, and then you want to submit it to the patients, okay, on a particular hospital, and then you're going to answer, okay? Then maybe you can use if if your population, you needed to cluster it by different places or cities, or you want to decide by strata because you wanted to make it more like according to gender or race, then you can start with this one, and then after that, then you can select from that population to for the interview once you have the result. Okay? Or the other way around. Which one is easier for you? Sometimes you can actually go there and get the survey, and at the same time you can actually um have the question or interview at the same time. But sometimes it's difficult to have all the representative or sample, like because of their time. So I hope if I have answered your question, Atika. Okay. And also in my study, actually right now I'm having a quantitative ongoing study, but I also have an interview, but still it is under a quantitative study. It's not a mixed method. Why? Because I have actually 75 item questionnaire, and then I have 10 interview questions specifically for the supervisors and managers, because of the reason that I wanted to triangulation purposes of the answers or the surveys that I got from their employees. From there, I can able to have a high validity and reliability of my study, which means if the answer of the employees are really rightful, it's really implemented or not, right? So that's another way. So Atika, if you can also have quantitative and then you have interview, you can use like for the purpose triangulation, so that you can have both, but it's easier because it's still a quantitative study. So it's also very in right now here in the Philippines, and you know. So any other questions from the participants?
Is there any
Yes,
other question?
yes, Nafis.
Uh,
Oh, Mr.
Assalamualaikum, hope you will be fine. Uh, I have a question. You recently told me that you are doing quantitative as well as qualitative study. As you are involved in the interview, will you convert their statements into the written paragraphs? It will look like a qualitative study, but I could not understand how you cleared it as only quantitative study. Can you understand my question?
Yes, yes. It's okay. I got your question. Okay,
Thank you.
Nafis, Mr. Nafis, thank you so much for your question. Yes, that is really that is actually what actually my advisor told me. Like, are you really doing a quantitative but you have a question? Okay, because I only have 10. Uh, I have actually out of 400 of my sample size that I needed. I have 400 plus, and then I have only 10 out of the particular food business industries. So I cannot really consider it as qualitative because the number is really small. If you want qualitative, at least you have 50, or maybe the maximum is 80. Or maybe if your advisor said or your panel said you got 100. So I only got 10. Okay, in each of
Mm,
every establishments, I'm only just triangulating so that the
fine.
answers of the employees are correct. Okay,
Thank
so that is why
thank you.
it's still under quantitative. And in
Thank you
terms
so
of
much.
reporting it, Nafis, you can state there like the same, like whatever is the answer of the interview,
Yes.
you can state it on your chapter 4 and 5 in a statement based format. Yeah. So
That means in the subjective part, we can
yes,
write as a subjective statement.
yes. Okay, so because how can I say this? Here in the Philippines, we are it's now in or common to have a quantitative study, and there are like maybe 10 who will confirm the answers from the employees. This is what we call a triangulation. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that is why it's still under quantitative. That is the term. So if you can mention that for the use of triangulation, I believe the experts were able to identify that yeah, it's under quantitative.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Is there any other questions from the participant side? You may ask now. I hope there is no more questions from the participant side. So let's wind up the session. Thank you, Doctor. That was a thought-provoking talk. Thank you for imparting your knowledge and remarks on the concept. Thank you once again, Doctor.
Right. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, Doctor. A kind information for the participants. You will receive your certificate within 7 to 10 working days.